Kloster Scheyern Export Dunkel.
Life is too short to be drinking shitty beer.
Welcome to another edition of Bands, Bikes and Booze Reviews. I've got one here today from the Kloster Scheyern Brewery, which is a genuine Abbey brewery from Bavaria. And I think it's, if I've got it right, it is the only genuine, well they're claiming it is, but then you've got the Kloster Index, which is a genuine brewery, Abbey brewery. I don't know what they're going on about, but they reckon they're the only one. Anyway, I'm not even going to go into that. But this lot have got a good reputation, and the reason they've got a good reputation is, would you believe, they have been going since, well, the records began in 1119. There was a Benedictine monastery that was set up in 1119 in a place called Scheyern, which is in Bavaria, and I think it's northeast of Bavaria. I could be wrong, but something's telling me that it is. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. But the brewery can date itself back to 1119, but they reckon that, and they're going by records, but they reckon there's sort of evidence to prove that there was a brewery even before then as well. It's only because they're going on delivery slips that they've found that date back to 1119. The earliest one was 1119, but obviously if they've got delivery stuff there, the brewery would have been even older, but they haven't got evidence, so they can't date it, so that's when they're going by. There you go, that's impressive. 1119, fucking hell, you know, that has to be one of the oldest breweries in Germany, if it's true. But it's a dark beer, dark export beer. Now it looks great, doesn't it? And you know, with that 11, and they even say it here as well, that is it Seat 1119 on there on the label, and it does look good. But the trouble is, this stuff is brewed under license by a company called Tucher. Do you remember them? They're a reasonably good Bavarian brewer. But I recently had some of their stuff, and I had their Helles and also the Weiss beer. Now the Weiss beer used to be sold in the Wetherspoons. I've probably gone over this loads of times. I'll say it one more time, but the Wetherspoons branches used to serve bottles of Tucher Weiss beer, and it was a really good Weiss beer, believe me. And I don't know what sort of contract they had with them, but they sold it, and it was one of my favourites. It was always my go-to when I went into a Wetherspoons pub. But then when Tim Martin threw his hat in with the Brexit party, or he wanted to leave the European Union, they decided to stop selling all foreign beers. Well, most foreign beers anyway. They still sell Kronbacher, which is good. But they basically got rid of everything else, which was a real shame, because they had some good German and good Belgian beers in there as well. So yeah, that's a real shame in my opinion. But getting back to my point about Tucher, I tried two of their beers, and the Helles was one and the Weiss beer was another, and they really didn't taste good, and I'm sure there must have been something up with them. I may have to revisit them, because the smell and the taste of sulphur off the beer was really overpowering, and it made it taste horrible. I really didn't like it, and I know for a fact that's not how the Weiss beer is supposed to taste. But it really, I wouldn't say it pissed me off, it disappointed me, because I was expecting a really nice, you know, and it would bring back a few old memories, because I haven't tried the Weiss beer in the pub since, I think it was 2016 or 2017, and that really annoyed me. That did, you know, when I and it wasn't cheap either. It was certainly more expensive than what you get in the Wetherspoons, and it didn't taste good at all. It was overpoweringly sulphorous, and it wasn't good. I just didn't like it. But we've got some of this stuff, and this is brewed in the same brewery, and I'm in two minds. You know, I mean, this is supposedly they do. Let me just clear this up for you. The brewery do two brands. They do their own brand, which is genuinely brewed in the monastery, but they have like another brand, which I think, and I'm reading between the lines here, they've got Tucher to do because Tucher have got better connections. I think Tucher are owned by a big conglomerate which can distribute the beer better. They've had to, you know, rely on them for everything. So rather than get them to brew their own stuff, which, you know, a bit of German integrity there, it means that it wouldn't be a genuine monastery beer. They've decided to have their core range and brew that actually in the monastery, which I think is brilliant. So this stuff is I wouldn't say it's a poor imitation, but it's not the genuine article, if you know what I mean. So I'm not sure whether this is a cheaper brand, but basically the point I'm trying to make is it's brewed under license. So there you go. So with that in mind, let's get this open and let's see what's going on. Right, 500ml bottle. It is 5%. It is a dark beer. It is all in German, and it contains Brauwasser, Gaston malt, malted barley, and hops. So naturally, it conforms to the Reinheitsgebot, as all Bavarian brewers do. And here's the label, and there is ye olde cap. I still hear people calling it a crown. It's a fucking cap, for Christ's sake. A crown is what you wear on your head. That is a fucking cap. Relax. It's lockdown. Fuck me. Anyway, calm the fuck down, you twat. Let's get it home. Let's see what's going on. There's another look at the cap, not the fucking crown. The cap. There you go. I think autofocus is shit his pants and decided to work because I'm in a bad mood. Oh, relax, relax. You got some German beer. Why would you be in a bad mood with a full bottle of German beer? I've just been speaking to a mate today. We were trying to organise a battlefield tour, go over on the bikes to Belgium and France for a weekend. So if that does come off later in the year, there's going to be a lot of videos on that. So fingers crossed, we'll be going over there, and I'll get you some videos and show you what it's like over there. But what's the aromas? Yeah, I'm getting this lovely nutty caramel malt. Not big, I will say that, but it's there, and it smells quite nice, as you would expect from certainly a dark Bavarian beer. And effectively, this is dark lager, and I'm sure that if you introduced something like this that tasted, I'm not saying like this, but tasted like a good dark lager, people's drinking habits, I'm sure, would change. Yeah. I will say the aromas on this aren't big. They're there, don't get me wrong, but they're not big. And I've tried some other fantastic ones. I'm going to use the Altbayerisch Dunkel from Inga as an example because it is effectively the same style of beer. The aromas on that are huge and the flavours are massive. On here, the flavours aren't that big. But it is there, I am getting it. So all is not lost. Now, of course, dark beer is, or German Dunkel, if you like, that is just dark lager with a bit of roasted malts in there, but it gives it a lovely caramel, sometimes a nutty style of flavour, which I absolutely love. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I prefer the Dunkels to the, you know, the Helles. Don't get me wrong, the fucking Helles is gorgeous. I'm not saying I don't like them, but if it's a choice between a Helles and a Dunkel, I'll always go for the Dunkel. I just think there's more flavour, more interesting flavours, you know, and it's still refreshing. But, you know, I'm not saying Helles is bad. I fucking love lager, you know, especially German lager. I'll drink it any time of the year. I don't give a shit. But if there's a choice, if somebody says to me, you can have a dark or you can have a Helles, I usually go for the dark. That's just me. That's just personal opinion. But there you go. Let's get it down the hatch. Zum Wohl, as they say in Germany. That's a bit weird. It hasn't got the big caramel malt that I'd be expecting and the big nutty flavours. It's got a different type of flavour. I'm not saying it's bad, it's different. And do you know what it is? It's sulphur again. What the fuck is going on there? Now this is cold, it has come out of the fridge, but you should be drinking this stuff cold anyway. But that does fall into place because the Tucher stuff I tried before, it did have that slightly sulphurous flavour. And this has got it as well. It's not as big, I will say that. But what it's doing, it seems to be overpowering the flavour of the caramel malt on this, which is a little bit disappointing. Now, yeah, and I'm getting it on the aroma now. I wasn't getting that before, I'm getting it now. It's not big, I will say that. It's not as pronounced as it was on the original Tucher stuff, but it is there. And do you know what? After all that build up, I'm thinking this isn't that great. If Marston's brewed German beer, this is what it would taste like. And when I say that, I mean the aromas aren't big, the flavours aren't big. There's a little bit of a nasty, I would say, well, yeah, I would class it as a nasty. And some Marston's beers do have that. I am not convinced that this is what this Kloster Scheyern stuff, the stuff they brew in the monastery, is the intended flavour, because the flavours are very, very toned down. There's none of that big caramel, nutty caramel malt. The sweetness is not there. Quite a relatively big suggestion of sulphur on there, which is sort of dominating everything. And as I say, the only way I can describe it, if Marston's brewed German beer, I'd say this is what it tasted like. It's got the characteristics of that. A big brewer who's brewing something under license, possibly, now I could be speaking out of turn here, but possibly cutting corners, maybe using cheaper malt. That sulphur, I don't know where it's coming from. It's either the water or the yeast, and it's anybody's guess. I'd say that it's not the water, because you know they do make a point in Bavaria about using fresh spring water, but it's there. It must be the yeast. It can't be an additive, because you know if they're claiming to conform to the Reinheitsgebot. It is export beer, though, which a subscriber, he did point out the other day that, and I didn't know this, that the export beer from Germany, they're allowed to put adjuncts in it. But now this is an export. It says Kloster Export Dunkel, but the other stuff, the other Tucher stuff, wasn't export beer. So I'm assuming that was available for the home market. So it wouldn't have had that added in. So I don't think it's an added nasty. It must just be I don't know, the strain of yeast that they're using. And the Weiss beer never tasted like that. It was always good. I don't know what the fuck's going on with Tucher at the moment. I like big caramel malt, and I like the big nutty flavours, the sweet nutty flavours. It's not got that at all. If anything, there's more hop character on that, and it's slightly taking on this is probably subconsciously where I'm getting the Marston's comparison. It's taking on very slightly the characteristic of a British bitter, which it shouldn't do. It should be sweeter than that if it's a typical German Dunkel. Now, if you don't like the sweetness on a German Dunkel, you're probably going to like that, but it's not for me. No, disappointing. So what's the verdict on Kloster Scheyern? Well, I was really excited to try this, and I've got a fridge full of beer now. I've had a big delivery from Beers Europe. This came from Beers Europe, and I opened the fridge and I was looking, and I've got a few lagers in there, and I thought, do you know what, I really fancy a Dunkel. And I saw this and I thought, this looks really good. It's a monastery beer, a monastery Dunkel, and I'm thinking, you know, the Weltenberg, that I've got that in my mind, that sort of stuff. And I thought, wow, this is going to be great, I'll try this. And then I always do a little bit of research before I review the beer, and I was looking on their website, and they said that this range of beer, they have their own range, but that's brewed in the monastery, but this stuff has been subcontracted or contracted out to Tucher. And immediately my fucking heart dropped, and I thought, that's a massive alarm bell. I'm really hoping it's a good one. Now, I thought when I tried the Tucher beer before, I thought it must be a bad batch because the sulphur was so overpowering, but I'm getting it in this as well, and that's a real disappointment. So I was going to say I'm feeling a little bit ripped off, but I suppose if I'd have done my research, I still would have bought it. But it just leaves that nasty taste in the mouth. Literally, when you've bought a beer which has got Abbey beer written all over it, Kloster and stuff like that. Kloster means cloister in German, which is like a monastery, and it's taken on the characteristics of the contractor that's brewed it, and you find that a lot, certainly in Britain with I was going to say Shepherd Neame there. You don't, not with Shepherd Neame, with Marston's. You just get that very low aroma. It surprised me when I poured it in the glass, and the aromas were just very, very insipid, and they still are, but I can get that sulphur is coming through now, and you can sort of get the caramel malt trying to fight through it, but it's just the sulphur that's coming through. Not impressed. Do you know what? I'm going to give it a 4 out of 10 because I feel really deflated after drinking it. I'm so psyched up to, get a really nice Bavarian dark beer. Compare it to the Hacker-Shaw stuff or the Paulaner stuff, or even, my favourite, the Iinga Alt Bayerisch Dunkel. This is nowhere near. It's a very, very poor imitation. In fact, I think if they put this on a supermarket shelf over here, I'd still moan about it because it isn't that great. And they probably add loads of nasties into it too. But there you go. I need to stop ranting. That's a 4 out of 10. It's on Beers of Europe now. I'm not going to recommend it. But if you're not a fan of that nutty sweetness, and to be honest, if you're not, I would question your tasting beer. But if you're not, and you prefer insipid Marston-esque type beer, then fucking fill your boots with that. But I'm being very generous with that 4 out of 10 as well. I should really halve that and give it a 2, but I'm at the stage now, I'm deliberating, and half of my mind's thinking, shall I give it a 2, shall I give it a 4, and the other half is going, fucking don't bother, just leave it, let it go. That's how enthusiastic I am about this beer. So there you go, draw your own conclusions. Give it a 2, give it a 4. Either way, it's not good. And remember, I'm drinking this shit, so you don't have to.